Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Suspenders Unbuttoned podcast. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Julie. And we're excited to welcome Alfonso Moreno to the podcast. Welcome, Alfonso.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are excited to talk with you. Congratulations on a fantastic season on When Hope Calls. We just finished watching season 2. Or are we calling it Brookfield now?
Brookfield? No, it's
Yeah.
season 2.
Yeah, okay. We're seeing it all over now being called Brookfield. So I'm not sure if they're
Changing the
leaning into
name?
that.
Or
Yeah.
we've seen some stuff from Great American Family that says Brookfield.
A When Hope Calls story.
Story.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We're we're
News
we're,
to me.
we're like in either way. So
I like hashtag Brookfield though.
Yeah, that's
That's
good.
kind of catchy.
yeah.
But anyway, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So season 2 started with a bit of a time jump. You had season 1, and then there was a Christmas movie in there, and that was a time jump also. And now we've been told we're at 1920. What are some things you had to consider when you were making a time jump into season 2?
Well, one thing I had to consider was that the children had to be, all the children at the orphanage had to be adopted because they were going to be so much older than even the time jump, and they changed a lot. And then that was the main thing. And then obviously I needed to, be introducing these new characters and deal with how far back Grace had left, and so just little things like that 1920 made sense that that it would the story could continue but not be too far in the future.
How did you approach creating the stories for this season? Because you were essentially closing one chapter and opening a brand new, basically a brand new show.
Yeah.
So how did you approach that challenge?
Well, it's to me it was like having this very large ship and having to make a big turn, right? And how you accomplish that because the season 1 had these 4 leads who were all going to be leaving, and I just had to incorporate new characters into the storylines and have it make sense and make it, so much of this show is based on emotion. And the first season was these 2 young women who were orphans and coming together and having to really get to know each other after being apart for so long, and then also running this orphanage. So that's sort of a nice way to start a series because you have all this emotion from that's just built in from the sisters being long lost and these orphans who had suffered some tragedy in their lives and try to make them feel more whole in their lives. So I wanted to create another dynamic that you could have that kind of emotion but be different, and I think I did that with this aunt who she never knew she had, and sort of how the aunt feels about having missed out on her, knowing her nieces and what happened, and as a result of what this family feud, how these sisters were sort of lost in the shuffle. So I wanted to, I just felt that was a good way in,
Mm-hmm.
and I also wanted to wrap up. I felt it was really important that we had established this romance between Gabriel and Lily, and I really wanted to wrap that up. So, but I also, wanted to create the situation where we have more stories going forward, and that's why I brought in Hannah and Wyatt. But I knew I couldn't do that right away because there'd be too much. So I just sort of had to bring it in a way that seemed smooth and seamless
So you
to the
did
best.
really bring us those beloved characters, but they need to move on to these new characters. What was fun about weaving in new characters, though?
Well, new characters with new backstories is always fun, and that's why you see in series how casts always grow because you get to tell these stories but you want to always inject new life. So you bring in a new character with their backstory and how that dynamic with the characters are there. So that's what I was trying to do with this series is have these these interesting backstories of Fearless Fletcher and Wyatt, who comes in, and you see Wyatt, who's this kind of gruff foreman, and Hannah, who's a fish out of water. It's always fun to do little fish out of water stories because it's people having to overcome a challenge and show this grit to do something that they're not comfortable with, and those are interesting storylines for me.
Okay, so tell us how do you even start creating this, like the season arc? What's your process like?
It's hard to say. It's more like you sit at a computer and think, what would be interesting to do? What would be an interesting dynamic? What is sort of like this challenge that you can present to a character that they have to overcome? And the challenge could be, that their heart has been broken, or that they're trying to start a new life. But it's just creating these challenges and creating that dynamics between characters that make the challenge even greater.
Right.
Great. So you're not new to weaving in new characters to an established story. You were the showrunner in Wind Calls the Heart in season 6 when you brought in 4 new characters. We talked to Elizabeth Stewart, and she talked about building backstories for those characters. You essentially did the same thing this season, weaving in 4 main characters into the story. Did you build backstories for them too?
Yeah, and that's the fun of it, because when you build a backstory, it's sort of, if you start with you don't have all of their backstory, because that comes with time. You sort of like think of new things and how they might react to situations, and their reaction is a part of their backstory. But you do create a backstory where it again makes their life challenging and makes the people whose lives they come and interact with an interesting dynamic. So that's with One Calls the Heart, I wanted to create these 2 characters who would be equally good, and that's what I felt wasn't 2 main love interests for Elizabeth that were equally good. And oftentimes you see when there's a love triangle, one is good, and the other one is like the main character doesn't know it yet, but she's going to find out that there's something wrong with that person, and the audience is rooting for the one good guy. But in this case, I wanted to make it like, no, they're both good, and in their own different way. So you want to create those challenges and have the audience obviously be rooting for your characters.
Right.
I feel like
these
guys have a lot of backstory. We are like waiting for Wyatt and Hannah and Nora.
Even Michael, yeah.
Michael Fearless Fletcher.
Definitely. When we talked with Wendy Cruson the other day, she talked about what she imagines Tess's backstory to be. Do you often talk with an actor about like what you're thinking their backstory is, or do the actors kind of have that freedom to imagine what they need to help bring life to these characters?
I think it's both. I think at times on the set you take opportunities over a cup of coffee between takes. You're talking to the characters, and you give them a sense. But the actors always bring a lot. I mean, the actors always sort of add more, which is great. And then it's sort of a symbiotic relationship, because then as they bring more, you feed off of that, right? So it's they're initially you're writing these roles, and you may have a voice in your head, but it becomes more crystal clear when a good actor takes that role, like on this series, and then all of a sudden you hear their voice, and then the writing process becomes a lot easier, because they're literally, it's an odd experience. You just hear them saying things, and it makes it a lot easier. So you're not putting words in their mouth; they're putting words into your fingers as you're typing them. It's an interesting process. I always tell the actors that I hear their voices. I just constantly hear their voices when I'm writing.
I love that actually. When you does that significantly change like kind of what you have in your mind as you're getting to know these actors as these characters and how you
It
see
does.
them?
It does, and it really, if an actor is really good with humor, it really, I think you end up writing more humorous things because you just know they can deliver it, and if they're really good at emotion, it just, I literally get teary-eyed as I'm writing things that are emotional because I could hear them say it, and so it's a really interesting process.
You needed to bring in a new Mountie this season, and these stories are based off of Janet Oak's books that are very Mountie focused. It's kind of a big deal. So, what did you consider when creating Michael Fletcher, who has a fantastic nickname, Fearless Fletcher?
Yeah, I mean, you want, the key to to me, these characters is to obviously humanize them. And, with the Mounties, the thing that you have to sort of be careful about is not to make them too earnest because in many ways, earnest isn't that interesting, right? It's our frailties, our flaws, and us overcoming our flaws that make us, I think, an interesting story. So it's just trying to find that balance of, yes, he's heroic, but he has, these, what are his flaws? What are his frailties? And that's, I think, what makes it the more interesting character. Like, right, with Fletcher, he's just like this guy who's known for being fearless and getting himself hurt, but also doing these heroic things. But then we find out that his Achilles heel is this beautiful lawyer who comes into town, and all of a sudden he just can't put two words together that well, which is, I think, it feels real, right? Because no one's perfect, and I think we all potentially get flustered around certain things.
Love a
Yeah,
flustered Mountie.
what was that, Julie?
I said we love a flustered Mountie.
No, I think it's interesting about Fletcher that, by the way, I like the nickname. I like calling him his last name, I mean. Anyway, I think it's interesting that he's this new Mountie, and we've met him, since the first episode of the season, but we still don't know a lot about him yet. So I think there's got to be like lots of layers to peel back, and I think it's fun that we're seeing. Hopefully, we're going to see it as Nora gets to see it, and it's not a character that we already learned to know and love and then he gets into a romantic relationship. It's kind of all happening at the same time, and that's fun.
Yeah, and that's what happens, in a writer's room. Part of what happens, you sit around and you talk about these things, and talking about, and it just, as you talk, things get filled in.
Right.
Just the conversation fills things in, and then you could, put that into a story.
Fletcher has kind of a season finale twist, and where he ends up, there's a lot of action going on, but he makes a strong, bold choice, and he decides to sleep on the porch at the orphanage. Tell us a little bit about that choice.
I just love the image of this Mountie protecting that family, and which is the orphanage. They are a family. And, they say it a few times in there. So it's just to me a strong image that he's doing his job, both from a professional standpoint and an emotional standpoint, and he's there. And I also just like the twist of that. Nora's inside, and given what's happened, you don't know if he's like in some way he's almost like a jailer there, sitting in that porch because she's trapped and she feels like she doesn't know what's happening, and at that moment there's a Mountie outside.
Yeah, like their
Was
stories kind of collided, even though they both have, no idea
I
what's
love that
going
it
on.
shows his heart, but he doesn't know it. It's like neither of them know what's really happening, but he's going to be there on that porch.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Nora feeling, like she's locked up and there's a Mountie outside, we've got to talk about that. Those last few moments with Nora and her assistant, and she's found herself in this situation where she could be involved in something very illegal. And we're all just kind of left like, what is going on? And can we still trust Nora? Is that the intention?
No, I mean, I think that in what I was hoping for is in the story that you see that she had no idea,
Yeah.
right? And
Well, right. She did.
so that if she is implicated, she's implicated in a way that she sort of just fell into it because of someone else, right? But there is potential legal, problems for her because of that. So, and I played with that whole kind of process when during the times they're talking about him representing someone who's guilty, and she says, "Well, no, they're not all guilty." And I mean, so I wanted to have, sort of set up what was going to happen, where
Yes.
he's been telling her all, and what she's saying is absolutely true. I mean, we need defense lawyers, we need people who are there to protect people who have their rights, and some of them are innocent. But in this case, that this she's been working with her boss was corrupt, and that's going to play out, and I think that's going to be an interesting sort of dilemma for both of them next season if we get a next season. But
If we get an next,
Knock on wood.
that where we're at. Everyone's got their fingers crossed for a next season. Um, uh, so with that, like, she's got that legal dilemma. She's got a Mountie who's propped out on her porch. Is that potentially going to bring an interesting dynamic for the two of them?
I certainly hope so. That's the plan. That what happens with her case and how it comes into Brookfield, and how I have some interesting, I hope, twists that where that story goes.
I've heard you say that you always intended Nora to join like this season. But when you had to shift a little for Lillian to leave, did you have to change anything about Nora's character to kind of make her the lead, or was it kind of always that way?
No, I did have to shift some when knowing that she was going to have to take over the orphanage.
Orphanage, yeah.
I had some other backstories that I had worked out, but I have since forgotten because there's only so much information that you can. And once you're like, okay, move on, and then now it's like, okay, I know I had something, but I don't remember. But I definitely it was a different sort of arc.
Okay, yeah.
But she was going to stay. I know she was
Yeah,
going to stay in
she was
there,
always going to stay. Yeah.
The
because at the time I knew that the Grace character would be
Yeah.
gone, so it was going to be her taking that place.
Filling that role, yeah.
right. You have Cindy Busby as Nora and Christopher Russell as Michael Fletcher, and these two have what, 4 movies together?
At least.
Is that helpful as a showrunner when you're writing for them to know that they've got all this chemistry and on-screen presence?
I think I think it was a happy accident.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean we didn't, and I think it helped. So I wasn't writing it with that in mind, but it definitely I think helped them as actors sort of have immediate chemistry together in these roles. I think it really helped.
Um, I wanted to go back to Lillian for just a quick second because Lillian and Grace were Tess's connection over to the orphanage. They had this big family backstory. But now that Grace and Lillian are gone, are we going to see Tess still be weaved into some of those orphanage stories?
Yes, obviously, we definitely will. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do it yet, but we are definitely doing it. And, you know, I I tell Wendy this all the time, and, that, I just love the gravitas that she brings to the
Yeah.
role. And, she's such a good
Yeah.
actress. And it grounds the series a lot. I love she came out. I've heard her say that she's the salt in this make bake mix, and I think that's so accurate. That right now, I've created a dynamic where Hannah
Yeah.
and Tess are going to be at
Yeah.
odds. Right, that's going to be the more, I think. Uh, so the dynamic we'll see, and it's such a natural dynamic that Tess is worried about her livelihood, and she doesn't want this young, inexperienced woman to destroy it. So it's based on, I feel, something that's real. It feels
Yeah.
real, as opposed to, she's not arch in a way. She's just like, this is a concern of hers that I think is a legitimate concern.
We absolutely love Tess and her gruff and tough nature. We love that this strong, independent person in the town is a woman, really bringing those points of view to that town. I love that she's the salt because we have sugar on this show. Oh, there's plenty of sugar, but you do not have a baked good without the salt. I'm here for Tess as the salt. When we were talking to Wendy the other day, one of the things that we talked about is we love her dynamic with Hannah, and we
With
can see
Hannah.
that struggle. That at some point, Tess needs to be the first one to give her a pair of riding pants.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
um,
good idea.
we do love we love the addition of Hannah too because she's bringing lots of things are coming up because of her entrance into town. So what made you choose the backstory where she had been spending her time there as a child and it was her uncle's farm and it wasn't just, a long lost niece who inherits the ranch? What made you decide on that more personal connection?
The emotion of it. I really wanted the emotion of missing her uncle and trying to sort of remember a past that she had, that she then left, and now she's coming back to. And I put in there that, I want to live here forever in that little drawing that she wrote. And this is, I just felt that again, you're always looking, what's the biggest emotional impact? And it's a much bigger emotional impact to make it a really important figure in her life that she, and there's gonna, and I want to delve into her story there as a child too, in next season, what went on and her relationship with her uncle. I actually had a few more flashbacks that we took out, but they're always, I had, I feel it's really, it's that whole emotional connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did get that one in the final episode on
Yeah.
the porch, and that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, I need more flashbacks. I need to see Hannah as a child on the
Yeah.
ranch. Um,
Yeah.
so you wrote in a whole new ranch. You already had one. You had Tessa's ranch, right? So now you're going to add another ranch. That's not so easy to do. What kinds of things did you have to consider as a writer, and then with the production team when you write a whole story in a different place?
It's the when I started the series, I wanted to obviously make it the same tone as One Calls the Heart, but different. And for me, what made it different was, one, it was the industry. In One Calls the Heart, it was first a coal and then it became timber. But we don't get, because of basically the lot that they have, you don't get to show much of any of what the industry is.
Right.
And on this, what for this show, we were able to get 1,000 acres. Oh no, we're not 1,000 acres, but we leased property on a 1,000 acre ranch. So we had this beautiful access to this beautiful ranch And with this cattle ranching industry, I could actually show that. And there's a lot of production value to see horses and cows. And so I wanted to expand that and have more because I just think, it just gives it a bigger scope to have, more ranching.
Yeah.
And so we got, it was an interesting process because we were building that ranch as we were shooting the first 2 episodes. I mean, that ranch went up pretty quickly. And so every day we'd go and see like, okay, today we have just like the little foundation, and then every day we'd see it go. And we shot the third and fourth episode, the ranch part at the very end. So we just had a little bit more time to build that ranch. And we walk in and there's this new paint smell as we walk in. But it's a beautiful interior. It's a beautiful ranch. So I just like having that production value and having that big scope, which I think makes it different in a good way. And also going back to Tess, that was another thing. Just so you know that I felt that there wasn't a good salty, strong female on One Calls the Heart, right? It was like Gowan had that.
Yeah,
it's like a good.
right.
So and this series are very female centric. So I wanted to have that kind of role for a woman. I thought would be very important, and again for the time period, very unique, right? Because it's these series are aspirational in a lot of ways in terms of romance and emotion. So and I felt that it just felt right to have this very strong female character in town,
Right.
a leader.
I always think she's like a little bit of that like historic Little House on the Prairie. It's the Mrs. Olson was the salt and that too. And you do need that. It's like it gives you a little, it's not exactly the mean. She's not wrong. Like she's right.
Right.
She's just gonna say
She's
it.
not bad. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really important that for me that these roles are that they all have a perspective. You could say you might not agree with their approach, but you can understand where they're coming from at least, because that's what makes it feel real.
Right. Right. And there's just something so dynamic about her character that she's definitely a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Everybody we talk to, like we love Tess. Yeah.
We're Team Tess. Like yes.
And it's amazing. So that you look at Tess and you look at Henry Gowan, they're tough characters, but people like them. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just,
we love Mean Henry too. So I'm like, put the man back in his bowler hat and his blue jacket and make him be mean for good. Like we
Mean for good. Yes.
He's had an arc. It's gone a long time.
We'll always advocate for Mean Henry.
We love when Henry just is coming through with I mean that man put you in your place in those early seasons. Then he's had an arc. And Tess is, I feel like, a little bit on the same journey, and she's had a lot happen to her life. She's got a lot of backstory we could explore. I mean, this is a woman who lost her husband and is running that ranch, and she's not going to lose it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, too, that you've paired her with Lucy, who is also another tough, woman, but she's also not gruff or salty. So even though they are capable in so many of the same ways, the personalities are so different. It's fun.
Yeah, and that's what living a hard life will do, right? She hasn't had that journey where she's had to, suffer the tragedy or had to.
Right, it's
So
like a contrast. Yep.
Yeah.
But Lucy is interesting because she does have that weird dynamic with her family where she's not getting the ranch, so she goes and works for Tess, and does kind of point that out to her dad here. That's actually a wonderful scene in the woods while they're waiting for the bad guys. Lucy and her dad have this pretty emotional heart-to-heart talk. Why did you think that needed to come to our screens in the finale?
In the middle of the woods and gunfire.
While holding guns.
that's often the time when you can talk, it seems like, because they say, like, when you have children, the best time to talk to them is when you're driving and they're in the back seat, right? And they're just like, it's like, so it's sometimes motion can be dealt with a little easier than that way, as you're both looking straight as bad guys. You can talk about things. So it's and it's just, I felt an interesting, that's something we had worked through, a while back, as we were working through, our initial season 2 before, because the COVID went away. That was always what I wanted to talk about with Lucy, and I find Lucy in season 1 was really an interesting character because you felt for her. She was interested in Chuck, right? And oftentimes if the jilted lover is empathetic, you really feel for them, that this is like, they're good people, and it's that. Right. And I felt that at the end of season 1 that she was heroic in her own way by saying go after her, go get her. So, and it was a very emotional, hard thing for her to say. So Lucy's always been a fun character and an interesting character for me to write.
Yeah, can't wait to get to know her a little bit more. Should we talk about that wood scene a little bit more? The big Mountie action scene.
So much happening out there.
Yeah. I love that this was pretty action packed. I don't know that we've ever seen that much action on the show. I mean, we definitely had Mountie action in season 1, but I really loved how it was so chaotic with everybody's running around, but then we just get these really small, tender moments. We had the Lucy and her dad, and we even had one with Wyatt and Hannah. It was a lot of fun. How did you approach developing that?
Again, that was also something I planned all along, that's how it would end. And, at one point we didn't know if we were going to have 8 or 10 episodes or 6 episodes. So I had different versions on the wall, but it always ended with that. Whether it was a 6, 8, it was going to end on that, because I thought that was a strong ending. And it was a challenge for our production because, we shoot, in so many days, and and like a film, if you say, oh, this is an action-packed film, it's going to take, an extra week or 2, you got to fit it in the same amount of days. So it was just how do we do that? We had to pick our shots very carefully. Those action shots, some of the more intimate wood scenes were shot like a few days earlier, a week earlier, but that action shot was shot on the very last day. And it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was like November 26th or 27th. Crazy. And we didn't know if it was going to snow, right? It was freezing, but it was like our last day. And when you're shooting things, you have to match them to, like if they're here and then you cut and come back, it can't be snow and then no snow. Yeah. If there's snow, we were going to be in trouble, right? So we were just crossing our fingers that we were going to make it through the night, and we ended up shooting. I think we stopped shooting around 2 or 3 in the morning. But the very next day, we shoot in North Bay, Ontario, which is about 3.5 hours north of Toronto. I was driving back, and there was the snow hit. There was a snowstorm. There's cars off their side of the road, and I made it to the airport. And the very next day, all roads were closed to North Bay. So I'm hoping, again, if we get picked up, that we shoot earlier this year, because it was so close. We were so lucky to get that last scene in, because it would have been a whole different vibe if you're there like in the woods and it's not snowing, and then you see the horses coming and there's a blizzard. Yeah. It wouldn't have matched.
I mean, it would have looked cool, but it wouldn't have matched.
But those scenes, I really wanted, again, we talked about every shot because of the time constraints. We just had to get each shot right. But we wanted the scene with the horses, like with, close up of a silhouette of the horses running, and then the flashlights, and it was fun. It was, but it was a challenge.
The flashlights were really fun too.
Yeah. I researched that. I saw that there, flashlights did exist then. So
Yeah,
we
did I
wanted to make
research
it.
that when I saw that and looked it up? And it's like flashlights looking like this were common in households in 1920 and businesses. And I'm like, okay, way to go.
Wow, I did like the audience. It's good. I'm looking it up because the audience apparently is too.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. But you also brought in two of your guest stars came back for that scene. Like, was that was really fun. You had a guest Mountie. Mountie Jim was played by Trevor Donovan, and a guest corporate rancher slash sort of bad guy Jesse Hutch came in to do that. Was that always the plan? Is that you would introduce him as the corporate guy, and then he would come back to be
Yeah, I mean, I introduced him.
questionable?
That's at gunpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's why the character of Huntsman Jesse would play a central role in the first episode of season 3 because he's got Tess, and I wanted to create that dynamic between them that there's a history, right?
Yeah.
And he was in the ranching world, and the corporation that sort of approached him, but he's always been a little on the
He's got
Shady
the
on the
side.
shady
feet that was
side, and
bad, and the
I've worked with Jesse before, and I knew he just would nail that role. And I thought he did a great job in the auction, and
Yeah.
in his scenes with Tess. I think, and so I look forward to next year when I could have a lot of between him and Tess in the first episode.
so let's talk about that. Tess is on her porch. She's been gone. She doesn't know what's going on at all. And literally, the end of the season is Jesse's character has Tess at gunpoint on her porch.
Yeah.
End scene.
Cliffhanger. Cliffhanger.
It needs to not be another 5 years until we find out what happens to Tess.
Yes, I hope we hear soon. That'd be great.
So if there's
Yeah.
a season 3, will we pick up right there?
Yeah.
Yes.
We love that.
Right there, or 3 or 4 hours later. But yeah,
Someplace right in that
yeah,
vicinity. Okay,
yeah.
because we're hanging. Like that was a cliffhanger. Like that leaves you just like, okay, like you like literally don't know which way it's gonna go.
Yeah. That's mission accomplished on my
Mission
part.
accomplished. That was a big one. You like to leave it hanging like that. Another really kind of interesting and fun moment out there in the woods was between Fletcher and Mountie Jim, and Mountie Jim's telling him, "Oh yeah, well don't forget this is a temporary position and don't get attached or whatever." But then we see that Michael chooses to go sleep on the porch of Nora and her orphanage. So it was, we've heard that kind of line before when Jack back in When Calls the Heart would say that the Mounties, I forget the line now, but they don't encourage the marriage and all that stuff. So it was really, I don't know. I liked that juxtaposition between him hearing that and talking with his buddy, but then he's choosing still, like, I'm going to go sleep on her porch. Yeah.
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 Yeah. He'll talk himself into anything if it involves Nora, I think.
Right. I kind of like watching this unfold when he just like shows up there and he's like, "Hi, I'm sleeping on your porch," and I'm like, he doesn't understand how deep he's in, does he? Like
That's
I
right.
kind of like that. Like he doesn't talk to her well, and he just actually doesn't understand how deep he's in, and how like literally his buddy Jim just told him it's not permanent, don't fall, and he's just like, "Don't mind me, I'll be on the porch," but he just doesn't really. I feel like he doesn't really know how much he's not going to give that up.
Yeah. And it's interesting. On the set, Chris made I thought it was a funny comment. He said, I'm like a vampire. I have never gone in that house, and it's just true.
He's never gone in the orphanage. Wyatt's never taken his hat off. There's a few things we need to happen.
Yeah, does Wyatt have hair? Because that hat's been on the entire.
Uh, He has a nice head of
No,
hair. I can
no.
tell you
we were
that.
we were talking. We had him on the podcast and just chatting, and I could see something though where he like needs to come in and have a chat and pull his hat out of respect, because he also just has like this quiet respect also.
Hmm.
Like I always kind of like his quiet moments when Hannah was auctioning the ranch, but not auctioning the ranch. I kind of loved how he just stood by her and supported her decision. Um, and when she asked for
Yeah.
his opinion, he gave it, but not his judgment. He let her make her own decisions. Like I do kind of like that quiet place with him.
No, yeah, I think it's interesting to have a character have that role where, a lot of times you have characters like who are chatty or, just, but to have that quiet, steady confidence and not feel you have to talk, right? To fill a void or silence. I think it's just another interesting, texture to add to that series. I
Yeah.
really like that.
Right.
Kevin McGarrett
You
once
know.
told us it's the space between the words that
Mm,
Yeah.
gives gives
who told us that, Julie?
Kevin.
Kevin. Yeah.
Kevin, yeah.
I forgot. Yeah. Um, so we have to talk about Maggie and Sam too, because we left them having this big, beautiful kiss under the fireworks. So that was
Yeah.
exciting, kind of
Yeah.
building up all season. Really fun.
Yeah. I mean, when I approached this season, again, sort of the DNA of the series involves, a lot of romance. And I wanted to have these relationships at different stages, right?
Yeah.
So, the, the Sam and Maggie is the one that's a little bit more advanced, right?
Forward.
It's
Yeah.
a little bit moving a little bit faster because they already had history. And now the characters are just sort of circling each other a little bit, getting to know each other. So, but I did want it to end again. All season, the plan was to end it with that. Okay, now they're at that stage, right? They've made it there, and where
Right.
do
Yeah.
we pick up after that?
I liked that the final episode. I mean, shots were fired, fireworks were fired, like the shots were. There's a lot going off on screen.
Corks are fired.
Corks are
Yeah.
fired, fireworks are popping, celebrations and gunfire. I mean, if there was that finale is full of all the different kind, romantic action, mounty action, party action. I mean, there's so much going on, um, but it feels like we need a season three.
And you know what else? For me, it felt like, the first couple of episodes in this season were wrapping up other stories and bringing some people in. Then we're just slowly getting to know everybody, and we don't know them very well yet. But we're starting to see how their stories might intertwine. And I thought that you did that really well in the finale. Yeah.
Thank you, and that's the challenge, right? It was with 6 episodes is how to turn the ship and then see the course, right? To see the sort of where it's headed, and
Without even
it's
knowing if
not.
you're going for another season. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so that was and I'm happy with the outcome, but it was sort of that was a challenge. It wasn't a lot of episodes to do accomplish those things, but I think now we have what the show is. We see that what the dynamics and and how our characters both will are stuff their potential, pitfalls and where they might, what might happen to them, but also the promise of romance for
Yeah.
all of them. So
Yeah.
it's set it up, which I think is good.
For Sam, the promise of romance came right on our screens with the fireworks and the kiss, but he had a season setting him up with he's found this gold, and there was a bit of a mystery at the end there too to get it all figured out. But he was also like trying to find his place in Brookfield. So he's found his love, but he hasn't quite found his place. Where do you see Sam fitting in?
Well, that's definitely part of what our season 3 is. What happens to him? He's now a man of means and what does that mean to him? What does that mean to the town? What does he do with that money? I think is, sets up a lot of interesting
Yeah.
possibilities.
Right. And he doesn't feel like a man who's going to sit and do nothing. And it doesn't feel like he has so much money that he's a multimillionaire, right? Like he maybe has enough money to do something that, his heart, fills him personally or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes, where he fits.
Yeah, no, that'll be his part of the journey for him is finding out what to do with that money and what to do with his life and how it changes the town. He's going to have a big impact on the town.
That's exciting. And I do love that it sort of happens opposite. Like a lot of time we're finding ourselves and then finding love. And I kind of I love how he found love first and then maybe they'll figure that out together and it'll be
Yeah. And that was important to me too, because it makes it clear that it's love,
yes.
right? And that's
Yeah.
you have that first and then build on that.
Right. Right. And that they cared for each other with nothing. So
Right.
right. It could be just some wonderful stories for Maggie and Sam as they kind of find their way too.
Right. Absolutely. There'll be challenges, which is what you want in storytelling.
That's how you tell a story. You can't be perfect. Can't be perfect, or you don't.
No.
Can't
No,
be too
and
pretty. Yeah.
I tell people that this series, both One Calls the Heart and When Hope Calls, they're ultimately they're about kindness and connectivity and coming together as a community. But the only way you can truly get that point across is to challenge all of those things.
Yeah.
Challenge community, challenge kindness, challenge. So there has to be that kind of like tension and conflict, or else it isn't an interesting story, and you really don't even get the point of it. So you got to like really challenge them with their storylines, and how it comes out at the end is you feel the emotion that you want the audience feels the emotion that you want them to feel.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so you're no stranger to this fandom. You've been right in the thick of it previously, but how have you felt with the fan reaction this year for season 2?
From what I've seen, that they're happy with it, which is great. I'm really thrilled to see that they seem to have responded to it, which is my hope.
Yeah. If you were to get a season 3, like how many episodes would you want? We feel as fans like 6 wasn't enough. I'm just gonna say it, right? So we need more. What would you like to see?
I mean, I would love, One Calls Art was 12, and 12 is. I mean, but the world has changed. I mean, I been in television a while, and I used to be 24.
Yeah.
Right? It's 24 episodes. And before that, if you look at old shows, they were like 36 or 38. It's
The whole
just
school year, it would be like the whole school year.
so 6 isn't a lot. I obviously wish it were more, but those are things beyond my
Yeah.
pay grade, as they say.
Right.
We'll cross our fingers for more and for season 3.
We're just gonna throw it up there into the universe. We would like
Yes,
season
thank you.
3, and we'd
Thank
like
you.
more
That would
episodes.
be, yes, it's always appreciated. And I can tell you that GAF really listens to fans.
Yeah.
And so any kind of, if fans would like it and they want to, put that out there, they will listen. They listen to social media. I know that for
For
a
fans.
fact.
Yeah, and they're
I've seen-
very
I've seen it.
responsive too. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
love that. Would you like to play a little game with us?
What is it? Do I have to answer before I know what it is?
Not a real game.
These are not really a game. It's a few favorites.
Okay.
Okay, do you have a favorite movie?
Probably Godfather.
Yeah. I mean, come on. There's a reason it's an icon, right? Do you have a favorite TV series or something you're currently binging?
No, I have. I mean, I watch.
Lots.
The great thing about being a television writer is you can watch all the television you want and say, I'm doing research. This
You're
is
right.
like, this is my job. Yeah, it's like a perfect, I just watch, I love shows and I love comedies, dramas, thrillers, sci-fi. I just love watching things. And
What are some comedies you like?
uh, I'm trying to remember what I just finished watching, binging with my daughter, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I hadn't seen when it was on the air. That was
Yeah.
funny.
That is a funny one. Yeah.
The Office. I mean, so a lot of the older ones that I didn't watch, I just sort of ended up binge watching. But there's so many I can't even. But those are so two of the more recent.
What's
Was
something
there a,
current you've
oh, I was
watched?
going to say, was there a show that you remember that just always stuck with you that kind of caught, helped you move forward in this career? Like something that made an impact on you?
You know, when I was in film school, I watched a movie called Fisher King, and there was just an emotional scene that I thought, wow, that's really impactful. It's very, and it was a scene where it was just about a woman who was telling this man how, basically how she was looking forward to their future together, and he was about to break up with her, and it was just so heart-wrenching
Yeah.
that I thought that's good drama, right? That's because it just I just felt sort of teary-eyed watching it for that woman because she just was so put herself out there, and so it's just a scene that I remember. But I remember just thinking that kind of scene really works.
Yeah. Stuck with you.
Yeah.
You really like a good, impactful scene, anyways. You've left us with some
I
of
tell
the most iconic and cliffhangers too. I'm just gonna say,
Right?
right?
I mean, I when I write something and I'm teary, I literally on both this show and the other and what calls it hard, I would write scenes and I would be teary-eyed as I'm writing them. I'd get tissue and write it. I think, and as I'm writing, I'm thinking this is going to work because I can't even type it without crying.
Right. For people who don't know, you wrote the Hug Heard Around the World on When Calls Hard at the end of 7 too. Like, I mean, that left the fandom
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
hanging.
It's iconic at this point.
Yeah.
And the scene that really impacted me on One Calls the Heart was after in the finale of season 5 when all the widows talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I was sitting in that chair and I was watching next to the director, and it would every take. The actresses were so strong; they would just give their lines, and they get teary eyed, and I get teary eyed with them, and then they cut, and they leave, and then reposition the cameras and do the scene over, and I just cry again. It was such a powerful scene
Yeah.
that about the loss and strength and moving on that I felt was really worked.
Was really
Yeah.
the heart of that show. I mean, that first episode is the mine blew up and pretty much all the men were lost. So, and a son too.
And that made the in some ways that made the series because it created a template for these strong women who have to overcome
Yeah.
things and move on. And I felt that was such a strong foundation to start the series.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they all know how to bring us to tears. They're all so good. Okay, so in season 2 of When Hope Calls, we had quite a few budding romances. Do you have a favorite trope?
No, I mean by definition, I think that you want to mix it up, or else it would become, you know, and that's sort of always the challenge is that if you're writing something, like as a young writer, I'd write something that oh, this is going to work because I've seen it before and it worked.
Yeah.
And that's the reason it doesn't work, right? Because you've seen it before. It's always, now it's like, you do, right, try to, you know, do something with everything's been done before, but how do you make it slightly different? A little twist on it. And that's sort of the challenge always.
Definitely.
So mix.
Yeah.
We're going with all the seasonings.
Yeah.
So in your spare time that you probably don't have very much, do you have any hobbies that you do?
No, I like physical activity. I like getting out and just, hiking and traveling. I love to travel. I mean, that's, I infuse my characters with, parts of me sometimes that, Maggie's this world traveler, and I love to travel. So I give her some, Nora's a lawyer and I'm an ex-lawyer. So I just give them little flavors of who I am.
Things you know, little flavors, things you know.
Things you know, yes.
I love that.
Oh, do you have a favorite musician or song?
Um, well, the one that pops up is just because when I got married, we that was our dance song. It's All of Me
Oh,
by John Legend.
yeah, yeah. Classic. Um,
It
uh,
is. I'm like, I think we danced at my wedding to that. That wasn't our wedding song, but I think we used it somewhere in there.
but but it was interesting because you have to. We were doing that whole thing where you do a dance, you
yeah,
practice a dance. This is always a challenge to a relationship because the instructors told us that you don't realize how hard it is, because you want to get the steps right and it's a
right.
lot
Yeah.
of pressure.
But there you were.
So I heard that song about 1,000 times, and
I
At
I
bet you
still
least,
were.
like
yeah.
it.
Um, but it's an amazing song, and a very romantic song. Feels appropriate for a man who writes romantic series. So
Yep. It was good. Okay, Alfonso, while we are waiting for news of hopefully a season three, do you have any other upcoming projects that we can look for?
I'm always developing, but until
hmm
the writer, after you've been in this industry for a while, you have your development box, and then it becomes development boxes, and it becomes a development room. You just,
a
it's
lot of
amazing how much
potential.
over time, what library of things you're developing. But yeah, so I'm just sort of developing right now.
Okay. All right. So we'll hope for good news soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and spending some time answering our questions. And we
It
hope you
was,
come back.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for watching or listening. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.